Back in the 1960s, it took a scientist literally years of painstaking, tedious trial and error just to figure out the three-dimensional shape of a single protein.
Oh, yeah. Decades, sometimes.
Yeah.
Just an immense amount of physical labor.
Right. And now you fast forward to today, and an artificial intelligence model can do it in, what, a matter of seconds?
Pretty much instantly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It really is. And we're currently watching this single underlying technology, which is basically algorithmic pattern recognition, simultaneously cure complex diseases, compose original symphonies, and unfortunately, automate historical human biases.
Yeah, it's doing all of that all at once.
Exactly. So we are pulling all this from a comprehensive AI news digest dated July 9, 2026. And our mission for today's deep dive is to basically cut through that overwhelming flood of information for you.
Right, because there's just so much noise out there right now.
So much noise. So we are taking these disparate updates covering biology, society, art, and ecology, and decoding how this one mechanism is aggressively rewiring our physical and social realities.
And, when you look at these updates, not just as isolated tech news, but as a broader spectrum of pattern recognition, a really profound duality emerges.
Oh, totally.
You see a tool that excels flawlessly when it's applied to the rigid laws of physics, but then it struggles wildly when it's forced to interpret the messy, subjective nature of human behavior.
Well, let's start on the microscopic end of that spectrum with what MIT just published.
The protein folding breakthrough.
Exactly. Researchers there have deployed a new deep learning model that predicts protein structures with just unprecedented accuracy. And, we all know proteins dictate cellular function based on their 3D structure, right?
Yeah, the shape is everything.
Yeah, it's that classic origami analogy. The string of amino acids has to fold into a highly specific shape to act as like a physical key fitting into a specific cellular lock.
Exactly. And if it folds wrong, the key doesn't fit, and that's how disease takes root. But the problem has always been that figuring out how that microscopic origami folds is computationally massive. I mean, historically, researchers relied on X-ray crystallography or cryogenic electron microscopy.
Which requires immense physical lab work.
Yeah, huge amounts. Or they try to simulate the actual physics of the folding process in a computer. But simulating every single atomic interaction, like the thermodynamic forces pushing and pulling on each atom, that takes supercomputers literally months to map out just one single protein.
Right, which goes back to the 1960s problem. So how did the MIT researchers bypass that bottleneck? I mean, if they aren't simulating the physics, what is the AI actually doing to get the answer in seconds?
So it abandons the physics entirely.
Wait, really? It just ignores the physics?
Completely ignores it. It treats the protein like a translation problem instead. The researchers basically fed the deep learning model the sequences and the final shapes of millions of already known proteins.
Okay.
And the neural network then learned to identify evolutionary patterns. It guesses the spatial distances between different amino acids.
So it's looking for patterns rather than rules.
Exactly. It maps out a spatial graph, and it continuously adjusts the coordinates until it finds a structure that mathematically aligns with the patterns it learned from the training data.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't need to know why the atoms attract or repel each other. It just knows that, well, whenever this specific sequence appears, it always results in this specific shape.
Okay. So it is pure mathematical correlation replacing physical simulation.
Right.
And for you, listening to this, the macro impact of that shift is enormous, particularly for your future healthcare.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because by removing the traditional trial and error bottleneck of physical lab work, this drastically cuts the time and massive financial costs associated with drug discovery.
We are essentially looking at the foundational architecture for personalized medicine here.
Yes, exactly.
When you can accurately and instantly predict these structures, you can begin designing synthetic proteins, basically therapeutics tailored to an individual's exact genetic makeup.
Which is huge because right now we use a blanket one-size-fits-all pharmaceutical approach, right?
Right, which often triggers adverse side effects in like half the population.
Right.
But now, treatments can be explicitly engineered for your specific biological locks.
It accelerates the timeline for curing complex, rare diseases because that initial discovery phase is just reduced from years to literally milliseconds.
Yeah, it's a total paradigm shift for medicine.
So this AI is basically a master at mapping the strict, unchanging laws of biology because biology has rules.
Right, rigid rules.
But the real world, the human world, isn't a controlled laboratory. If we take that exact same pattern matching engine and point it at something deeply flawed and historically complex like human society, that veneer of objective math totally falls apart.
Which brings us to the newly released report from the AI Ethics Institute.
Yeah?
They conducted an extensive audit focusing on predictive policing tools that are currently being deployed by law enforcement agencies.
Right, so these are algorithms designed to anticipate criminal activity and allocate police resources accordingly.
Exactly.
Now, before we unpack this, I just want to be entirely transparent with you listening. We are not taking a political stance here.
Right, absolutely not.
Our focus is strictly on the mechanics of the technology and the empirical findings published by the AI Ethics Institute report. We are just looking at the math.
Just the math and the data.
But looking at that math, I kind of have to play devil's advocate and push back on a fundamental premise for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
If an algorithm is just code, right? If it is just processing ones and zeros, how can it actually exhibit bias? I mean, if the programmers explicitly instruct the AI to ignore race or demographics, shouldn't the output be purely objective?
Yeah, it is a very common assumption that code is neutral, but algorithms are entirely dependent on their training data.
Ah.
This is the classic garbage in, garbage out paradigm. The AI doesn't write itself in a vacuum,
Huh.
It learns by analyzing historical data to predict future outcomes.
Right.
And the AI Ethics Institute report reveals that these predictive policing tools are heavily trained on historical arrest records.
Okay, but wait, let me wrap my head around this. How does it end up targeting minority communities if the system is explicitly blind to race?
Because AI is ruthlessly efficient at finding proxies.
Proxies, what do you mean?
Yeah. So the algorithm might not be fed data on race, right? But it is fed data on zip codes, income levels, education, and historical arrest rates.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If certain neighborhoods have historically been heavily patrolled for a multitude of complex systemic reasons, the historical data will inevitably show a higher concentration of arrests in those specific zip codes.
Right, obviously.
The AI interprets that historical data not as a reflection of human policing habits, but as the objective mathematical truth of where crime inherently occurs.
Wow, so it builds a model using zip code as a proxy for risk, completely bypassing the explicit instruction to ignore demographics.
Precisely. And that creates a really dangerous feedback loop.
How so?
Well, the AI predicts a high risk of crime in, let's say, neighborhood A. Law enforcement then sends more patrols to neighborhood A based on that prediction.
Right, because the computer told them to.
Exactly. And because there are more officers there, they naturally observe and make more arrests for low-level infraction.
Oh, man.
Then, those new arrests are fed back into the algorithm, which confirms the AI's initial prediction. So it prompts the system to recommend even more patrols for that same area next month.
It's just a self-fulfilling statistical prophecy.
Exactly what it is.
The AI Ethics Institute is basically pointing out that we are laundering historical human bias through a machine, and then we're treating the output as an unassailable mathematical truth.
Right. And it disproportionately targets minority communities, exacerbating social injustice under this guise of technological efficiency.
So what's the solution here? Because I imagine a lot of cities are using this.
Yeah, the report issues a very urgent call to action because the adoption rate of these tools is accelerating rapidly among city governments.
Yeah.
They're all looking to optimize budgets,
Makes sense.
So they're demanding transparent algorithms, meaning independent auditors must be able to see the weights and variables the math is prioritizing, rather than treating the software as this proprietary black box that no one can look into.
They are also calling for robust, standardized ethical guidelines and international cooperation to ensure fundamental human rights are protected, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because if a city is going to use this technology to dictate security and law enforcement, there has to be a human-in-the-loop mechanism to break that automated feedback loop.
Right. We are balancing the appeal of technological efficiency against the very real threat of automated discrimination. It perfectly illustrates the danger of applying biological or physical pattern recognition directly to complex societal frameworks.
Okay, where to? Well, let's pivot from logic and law entirely for a minute.
Okay, where to?
If AI struggles with historical societal nuances, how does it handle something completely subjective and emotional like human creativity?
The art side of things. Yeah. Our third source details a San Francisco-based startup that just launched a highly advanced AI-powered music composition tool. According to the Digest, it uses machine learning to generate completely original, studio-quality music tracks in minutes based on simple text prompts, like you just type in mood, genre, and tempo.
Right, and this is really where the technology challenges our foundational definitions of art. But it's important to understand the mechanism here, because this isn't just a machine splicing together pre-recorded MP3 samples like a digital DJ.
Right, it's not just a soundboard hitting play on a drum loop.
Not at all.
So what is it actually doing when I type in, say, upbeat synthwave for a workout?
Okay, so the neural network has analyzed millions of existing songs, breaking them down into these microscopic audio components. It maps out what is called a latent space.
A leap?
Yeah, it's basically a massive, multidimensional mathematical landscape. It figures out the mathematical relationships between rhythms, chord progressions, and the acoustic frequencies that humans associate with words like upbeat or melancholy.
That is fascinating. So when you input your text prompt, the AI navigates to that specific coordinate in the latent space, and then it generates raw audio waves from scratch, predicting the exact acoustic frequencies that should follow one another to synthesize that specific emotion.
I look at this and, the immediate panic is always, does this make the human composer obsolete?
Right, that's always the fear.
But honestly, to me, this feels like the modern equivalent of the synthesizer.
That's a good comparison.
Right, because when the electronic synthesizer was introduced in the mid-20th century, traditional musicians were terrified. They thought a machine that could mimic a string section would render violinists completely useless.
Yeah, there was a lot of pushback.
But it didn't ruin music. It just became a super-powered instrument that birthed entirely new genres like electronic dance music and synth pop. It just removed a barrier. I kind of view this AI in the same way.
It is a really strong historical parallel, though, with one crucial distinction. The synthesizer still required a musician to physically play the keys and compose the melody. This AI essentially assumes the role of both the instrument and the composer.
Ah, yeah, that is a big difference.
However, your point about removing barriers really hits on the core implication here, which is the democratization of art.
Absolutely, because traditionally, if you are an independent game developer, a small-scale content creator, or an aspiring filmmaker, and you need a high-quality original orchestral score, you are looking at an insurmountable financial wall.
Oh, yeah. Thousands and thousands of dollars.
Exactly. You have to hire a professional composer, book a studio, pay session musicians, and cover mixing and mastering.
And now, a creator with just a smartphone and a basic concept can generate a bespoke score in 3 minutes.
It's incredible.
It completely strips away the financial and technical barriers to entry. I mean, it undeniably sparks intense, valid debates about artistic soul, copyright infringement regarding the training data, and the intrinsic value of human struggle in the creative process.
Sure, those are real concerns.
But from a purely access-driven standpoint, it violently expands the boundaries of creative possibility for millions of people who were previously just priced out of the medium.
It takes a historically exclusive capability and makes it universally accessible. And, that concept deploying powerful algorithmic tools for a broader collective good transitions us perfectly into our final piece of source material.
The physical world application.
Yes. We have spent this entire deep dive looking at digital outputs, right? Microscopic proteins, statistical crime models, and digital audio files. Now, we are looking at how this exact same underlying technology is being deployed in the physical dirt and heat of the real world.
Yeah, the digest highlights a major initiative led by conservationists in Africa. They're using AI-powered drones to monitor vast wildlife populations and actively track poaching operations.
Which is just a brilliant application of edge computing and image recognition.
It really is.
But let's break down why this is different from just, flying a camera around. A standard drone still requires a human to stare at a monitor trying to spot a poacher in hundreds of hours of raw footage. Right?
Exactly, which is incredibly inefficient when you're dealing with hundreds of square miles of savanna. What makes this project revolutionary is that these autonomous drones are equipped with advanced computer vision models that process the data locally, right on the device itself.
And that is the edge computing aspect.
Right. They don't need a massive, stable internet connection to send all that raw footage back to a server to be analyzed.
So they are basically using the exact same pattern recognition foundation we just talked about with the protein structures and the music generation, but applied to visual and thermal data sets.
Spot on. The neural network has been trained on thousands of heat signatures and visual profiles,
Okay.
so it can instantly differentiate between the thermal footprint of an endangered rhino, a herd of elephants, and the distinct heat signature of a human or an unauthorized vehicle hiding in the brush.
And because the processing happens locally in real time on the drone, the reaction time drops to virtually zero.
Exactly.
Instead of blindly patrolling massive expanses of land, hoping to stumble across a threat, the conservation teams have an autonomous eye in the sky. The moment the AI identifies the pattern of a poacher entering a protected zone, it instantly pings the GPS coordinates to the human wardens on the ground.
It completely transforms conservation from a reactive, investigative effort into a proactive, highly targeted defense system.
It's amazing.
By automating the surveillance and threat detection process, limited human resources can be deployed exactly where they are needed. It's actively preserving biodiversity and protecting endangered species with a level of efficiency that was just physically impossible a decade ago.
Think about the narrative we usually hear regarding technology and nature. We're constantly told that screens, algorithms, and artificial intelligence are the things separating us from the natural world, that tech is inherently anti-nature.
Right, that's the standard trope.
Yet here, in this digest, we see that very same technology acting as nature's most effective and vigilant guardian. It is a deeply hopeful contrast, I think.
It is, and it reinforces the reality that the technology is agnostic.
Agnostic.
Yeah, I mean, the AI does not inherently desire to protect rhinos any more than it desires to write synthwave music or target a specific zip code for law enforcement. It simply executes the pattern matching optimization we engineer into it.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started at the absolute microscopic level, breaking down how deep learning predicts protein folding, which is completely upending the timeline for drug discovery and paving the way for personalized medicine.
An incredible leap forward.
Then we navigated the incredibly messy, urgent ethical hurdles of predictive policing, seeing firsthand how biased historical data can create discriminatory feedback loops in law enforcement.
A very real, very urgent problem.
We debated the democratization of music through generative AI, and finally, we zoomed out to the African savanna to see edge computing actively protecting endangered ecosystems.
If we synthesize all of these distinct updates into a single takeaway, it is really about recognizing the fundamental nature of artificial intelligence as a tool.
Right.
Society has this persistent tendency to want to categorize AI as either a utopian savior or a dystopian threat.
Oh, always one or the other.
But it is neither. It is simply an unprecedented amplifier of human intent. It flawlessly reflects our highest, most noble aspirations when we direct it toward medicine and environmental conservation.
Yeah.
And it just as accurately and ruthlessly reflects our deepest historical flaws and prejudices when we feed it unexamined societal data. It is a mirror, just as much as it is a machine.
A mirror and a machine. I think that perfectly encapsulates the duality we've explored today. This isn't just a hammer driving a nail. It is a system that is rapidly infiltrating and rewiring every single facet of the human experience.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you listening with a lingering question to ponder on your own, something that builds on everything we just unpacked today.
I love a good thought experiment.
If artificial intelligence is rapidly approaching the point where it can predict our biological needs before we even feel sick, and it can generate our art on demand before we pick up an instrument and police our physical environments, what happens to the human drive for discovery when a machine can provide the answer before we even know what question to ask?
That is a fascinating question.
It really is a lot to chew on. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the July 9th AI Digest. Keep asking the hard questions, stay relentlessly curious, and we will catch you next time.